Olympics to Britain, part as Minister of Sport under that government. And we're delighted to see her now as a Baroness. So, Baroness, would you like to talk about Northern Ireland now?
Well, thank you very much. And can I say thanks to the Freedom Association for organising this. And I think probably there's never been a time when a Freedom Association is actually more needed in our country, looking at some of the things that are happening at the moment. I want to start off just a little bit about the general position of the Union and being at risk, and before I go on to Northern Ireland. I mean, I think we're all to blame. All of us who do believe in the Union are to blame in a way, because for many, many years, people just didn't speak up for the Union. They didn't in any way make an attempt to sell the benefits of it. We all took it for granted. And I think particularly probably the English are more responsible for that than anyone else, because, you know, for me, the Union in terms of England, England needs us as much as we need England. And I think that's very, very important. But, you know, Brexit has certainly changed the whole nature of the discussion now, because for those people who didn't want to leave the EU, they are enjoying the fact that they can try, and having denigrated our country not being able to look after itself and do things on its own before we left, are now kind of using, I think, the whole attack on the Union as quite a useful mechanism for them to continue their sort of almost anti-British attitudes. And I think we have been apologists for being British. I think you sort of referred to that a little bit at the beginning, David. The flag issue is a very good example. I mean, I never have understood why we are so hesitant about flying our flag. I mean, I think all our government buildings and all our institutions should fly the flag all the time. I absolutely see no reason why we shouldn't be, should be in any way afraid of that. Obviously, at one stage, the flag was seen as being in the grip of, you know, very right-wing extremists. But when we did begin to take it back, there's still this idea that somehow, you know, that's not what the British do. They don't need to show the flag. And I thought we saw just the other day in that BBC morning programme, where the two BBC journalists, you know, I thought behaved shockingly in terms of attitude to a government minister having a flag. And yet they would have said nothing about, you know, anytime an Irish minister comes on, there's an Irish flag flying, or there's an EU flag flying. No one ever criticises that. So I think we have to be much more upfront and speaking out, and stop being so sort of unassuming and almost humble about the Union. Now, in Northern Ireland, of course, this year, it's the centenary, 100 years ago since Northern Ireland was created. And originally, I think COVID has obviously affected quite a lot of some of the celebrations, but even before that, you know, you've sensed that there was a reluctance by the government, the UK government, to treat it as anything other than, oh, well, I suppose we'll have to do something about the centenary. And I think that's been really the problem with a lot of what is happening in Northern Ireland, that for too long, the UK government has taken the attitude that they should be neutral somehow on the Union with Northern Ireland. They're not neutral on Scotland. They go and campaign if there's a, you know, on the independence referendum, they campaign for Conservatives to get elected. But in Northern Ireland, and it's, you know, with Tony Blair as well and Labour governments, it's always been, oh, no, we have to be very careful here. We have to be neutral. Now, the Irish government isn't in the slightest bit neutral when it comes to Northern Ireland's place within the Union and their demand and their keenness to get a united Ireland. And I do think that the Conservative Party, whilst they certainly have put more effort into having a Conservative association in Northern Ireland, they haven't really put the effort into getting what I would call normal politics in Northern Ireland. And Labour has just been as bad, in fact, even worse, because the Labour Party does not stand candidates. They allow people to join, they take the money, and they have a Northern Ireland association, but they don't actually put up candidates. And I do think that's very important. Now, clearly at the moment, the whole centenary and everything to do with that has been affected by the protocol. And I'm almost tired of talking about it, but I just want to go over very, very quickly the crucial issues on that. And can I say at the beginning that I very much welcome the move of putting David Frost in charge now of our relationship, and the co-chairing the committee, which is to look into the details of the protocol. And I have to say, I've said it publicly, but I think Michael Gove has been actually very, very anti-union in the way he has behaved. Sorry to all you conservatives listening in, but I really do not think that he was in the right place at the right time. The protocol was designed, and again, I'm going to defend the Prime Minister on this, because I think our Parliament, and I was a member of it right up until nearly the end of the Brexit process, did everything they could to stop Brexit. And I think the Prime Minister and leading members even of the ERG were put in that very, very difficult position that they had to get Brexit over the line. And because of the campaigning of the Irish government, linking in with the European Union, using Northern Ireland and the Belfast Agreement as the kind of weapon to destroy and to make it as difficult as possible, in the end, there's no doubt about it that the government gave in. They gave in to the threat, the alleged threat of what would happen if we happen to have some kind of trade border at the frontier. And it's almost as if, you know, when people talk about it, there's no border on the island of Ireland. Well, A, there's a border because there's a frontier, it's a different country with a different currency, the different corporation tax, different mileage, euro, everything is different about it. So there is a frontier, but also the way the protocol is now working, there is a border on the island of Ireland. It's not in the Irish Sea. Boats aren't crossing over the Irish Sea and being stopped in the middle of the sea, as people talk about almost. It's in Northern Ireland. It's at Larne, it's at Belfast. So there is a border on the island of Ireland. So all those people who said we have to stop that. But also the whole question of consent has been destroyed, because the argument was that after 4 years, the Northern Ireland Assembly could decide whether they wanted the protocol. But the consent principle, very, very much part of the Belfast Agreement, as put forward very strongly by a brilliant article by David Trimble, one of the founders, really, of the instigators of the Belfast Agreement. The consent principle has been changed, so it's going to be a majority in the Assembly, and the whole idea that one community could stop something happening, you know, that's been stopped, and that's been changed without any consent from people in Northern Ireland. The protocol is not only bad in terms of the way it's affected all the businesses and the difficulties of getting things across, and the ridiculous thing that we weren't allowed to bring British soil into Northern Ireland, that's now being stopped. But I mean, it really was ludicrous, and there's little things every day that still come out. But even if all the tinkering around and the fixing of things and the extending the grace periods, which is what the government is now pushing, and Brandon Lewis, who of course started off right away at saying there is no border, there is no border, there is no border. He's had to admit, yes, there is a trade border, but we're going to make it as light as possible. We're going to extend when the really tough things come in. All of that will make no difference to the constitutional position. So Northern Ireland, not only is there a threat to the Union from people, you know, overall in the United Kingdom, maybe wanting to have more independence in Wales and Scotland, but actually the British government itself, my government, has actually brought in the threat to the Union. And I just would warn people that there's somehow this idea, because it's always Great Britain and Northern Ireland, a little bit of an aside, do not underestimate the relationship between Northern Ireland and Scotland. And, you know, whatever happened in Scotland, it would have a huge influence in Northern Ireland. And whatever happens in Northern Ireland in terms of any kind of referendum would affect Scotland as well. So the Union, you know, has been put at risk by our own government. But I have to say, those opinion polls, the one poll that gave, I think, 43%, is not what is actually there. All the other polls show a much, much smaller percentage of people who would support going into a United Ireland. And, you know, there's a whole debate to be held on the economy aspects of just how much worse off we would be if there was a United Ireland. But I'm not in the Union, and I'm not supporting the Union because of money. Obviously, we're very grateful. It's wonderful. The COVID situation, the vaccination that has gone on in Northern Ireland has been amazing in comparison to what's happening in the Republic. But for me, it's not about money. And I do get very angry with some of my own sort of pro-union, well, certainly the unionist parties who push the money attitude. The Union is much more than about money. And if we just rely on it being about money, then to me, that is ignoring all the wonderful things about the culture. So we've got to, in Northern Ireland, I want to see the rest of the United Kingdom giving much more support to people, to pro-union people in Northern Ireland, to recognise that the protocol is breaking the Belfast Agreement and is breaking indeed the Act of Union, and working with us and supporting us in our legal challenge, which eventually will end up in the Supreme Court. But hopefully before that, the government, including the Prime Minister, who I genuinely feel wants to do something about this, that behind the scenes we can get this altered, because otherwise Northern Ireland is just being driven further and further away from the rest of the United Kingdom, and that's not good for the Union.